Please welcome the Maya Angelou Presidential Chair at Wake Forest University, the Executive Director of the Anna Julia Cooper Center, and Executive Director of the Wake Forest Pro Humanitate Institute, Melissa Harris Perry.
It's a pleasure to be with all of you this morning. I have a fantastic panel. We've been having a great time already discussing some of these issues in the back. Suzanne McKechnie Klahr is CEO and founder of Build.org. I can't wait to have an opportunity to speak with her about the program that Build.org is. It is a program that brings together young people in cohort learning opportunities to think about entrepreneurship as a tool for building academic skills, uncovering life skills, and developing a pathway for learning that we may not be attuned to in our current traditional learning environments. Michael Sorrell is president of Paul Quinn College in Dallas, Texas. And Michael's giving me all kinds of real life advice in the back. We were having a conversation about higher education and creating, in this work that he's doing at Paul Quinn College, a new college model that connects school and work, something that we're also deeply interested in at Wake Forest University, where I teach. And then Dr. Michael Lomax, who's president and CEO of the UNCF, United Negro College Fund, the nation's largest private provider of scholarships for historically Black colleges and universities, and also a leading advocate of college readiness. We were having a conversation about whether or not we'd ever connected during our time in New Orleans. And once you get New Orleans folks talking about New Orleans, we could barely even bring ourselves back to this moment. But here we are. Then I want to start with you because the young people that you work with are some of the youngest among this group in that they are high school students. I was fascinated in the conversation we were beginning to have about this idea that the work that you all do uncovers a set of tools, skills, and capacities that we might not always see in young people. Talk to me about what Build.org does.
Yep, so we use entrepreneurship as a vehicle to re-engage young people in their learning. And we found that there are 6 skills that are critically important that research has shown young people need to be successful, but employers are also saying they want to see: communication, collaboration, problem solving, innovation, self-management, and grit. And we find that these young people already have those skills, they're innate, and the young people we work with, they have tremendous amounts of grit, but they don't necessarily know how to harness that grit for their academic or professional success. So by creating small businesses, they're able to actually bring out the skills they already have and then apply them to their real-world experiences.
So this is an interesting idea for me. Michael, I want to go to you on this. You know, I'm a traditionalist on the college front in many ways. I want to just sit around a seminar table and read the great books and think the big thoughts. Right. You know, parents probably hate to see me come in. Oh God. At the end of 4 years, what will my children be able to do but sit around the table and read the big, great books and think the big thoughts? So how do we take the real world skills, right, that we talk about, but also this capacity to read the great books and talk about them and have the big ideas that we traditionally think of as college skills? How do we put them together to make a pathway?
No, I think that's a great question. I mean, listen, I am the beneficiary of the type of education which you described, and I became president of a college where that wasn't suiting my students well. 85% of our students are Pell Grant eligible, 70% of them have 0 expected family contributions, and they tend to be students that are on the mid to lower end of the academic spectrum. So what we did was we said, look, if it doesn't work, why don't we build something different? Why don't we incorporate their need for working into their academic experience? The students are already working. 75% of our students, period, across all of higher education, work more than 20 hours per week. But they're working in jobs that don't build towards the academic enterprise. They often compromise their ability to perform academically. So our work program, the students work between 10 to 20 hours per week. They have a work transcript which identifies a set of skills. They're in jobs, most of them, that relate to their career interests, and then they have their academic ability to do exactly what you talk about, so they can philosophize and maximize, right? So it's a nice combination that gives them a competitive advantage in the marketplace.
And Dr. Lomax, isn't this the great debate of the turn of the century, a debate that Du Bois and Anna Julia Cooper, Ida Wells, and of course Booker T. Washington were all engaging in the space that you are now in leadership in around African American students, and which I think we sometimes engage in with students who are presumed to have difficult experiences as young people, whether or not they can do the philosophizing, whether or not they can learn the big things, or whether or not we should just teach them a trade. Is that a choice, or is it something we ought to be trying to think about doing together?
Well, it's a false dichotomy. Right. Here is the reality for African American college graduates, all African American college graduates. Unemployment rate for college graduates writ large, 22 to 27, is about 5.9%. Unemployment rate for African Americans, same group, is about 13%. Underemployment rate, which means that they're doing something that doesn't require a college degree, is 55%. So something that is wrong in that enterprise. They've done everything right, they've gotten that degree, and they still can't get a good job. So I think we have to ask the question, what are colleges doing wrong? What else can they do? And I think they can be more efficient and more effective and ensure that these young people can afford the books, the great books, and afford the life that they want to have to achieve their aspiration, which does include significantly financial security. So I think that we've got to reimagine the enterprise. And I was an English major, so I'm all for great books, but we got to do something else.
Suzanne, Build uses something I love, cohort learning. The only person in the room with the information isn't just the teacher standing up there waving their arms.
Yes.
How are our peers part of what creates the pathways for us in learning and in work?
I think that very often young people want to go at it alone, and when we get into higher education or when we get into careers, it's all now about teamwork, and it's about being able to communicate and collaborate. And I think that very often when you're putting young people in teams, inevitably in 9th grade they want to work with their friends, but they learn lessons about what their own assets are and maybe what some of their deficits are that their peers can share with them that the teacher probably wouldn't even acknowledge. And I think when they see the creativity and the beauty and the brilliance that they can create together, they start to become very excited about working in teams academically in their professions, and I think that it creates a different type of pathway. Not everyone should be a sole proprietor. We want people to be working in teams, to collaborate, and in companies, that's what they're looking for, people who have those skills, but we don't typically teach them in high school.
Where else can we help students learn the real-world skills of collaboration and teamwork?
You said where else?
Where else? What are the other tools, other spaces for creating that?
Oh, I mean, listen, I think that to Michael Lomax's point, I think we have underutilized higher education for doing that. I mean, people talk about collaborative learning, but they still talk about it in a safe context. I think you have to push the boundaries. Our students want to be engaged in solving the big issues of the day.
Yeah, they do.
So you have to incorporate the big issues of the day into their academic experience. Now, that's a little uncomfortable for traditionally educated professors, right? So they've got to learn along with the students. But what we have discovered is that if you marry the two, if you say to a student, you know what, I'm not going to talk about what you don't know, I'm going to talk about what you're passionate about, and we're going to design a learning experience heavy on experiential learning that allows you to integrate what you've experienced outside, because many of our students have experienced things none of us can imagine, right? And frankly, they shouldn't have had to experience those things, but they have, so why don't we use that to their benefit instead of telling them how much of a detriment it is?
Okay, so stop telling me that story up here, tell it to me down here. Make that concrete for me.
Sure.
So when you say I'm a traditionally educated professor who now has to make myself vulnerable and be in a classroom of students where they get to be the experts, what do you mean?
All right, so here's one for you. We were in a food desert. Right? The college is closer to the city garbage dump than it was a grocery store. So we decided to turn our football field into an organic farm. We built in the student experience so that they had the experience of changing the dynamic and the narrative. Our students run the farm. They are our largest customer of the Dallas Cowboys, so we're not anti-football, okay?
Do they use the compost pile as like tackling dummies? Is
Listen, we've sent more kale to the NFL than football players, all right? So, but the point is, we built that.
I feel like that's a T-shirt, sir. That's a T-shirt. We have sent more kale than tackles to the. Yes. Okay. Sorry.
But what it's done is it's given our students the ability to say, we tackled an issue that affected all of us. We won. Yep. We changed it. We ended a food desert, and we can teach academic lessons through their personal experiences, and it becomes part of the lore of the institution, and the students who did it are celebrated as champions.
You know, Michael has done this incredible job. I saw Paul Quinn before, during, and now after his leadership has really helped to transform that institution, and he hasn't been afraid to break down boundaries and to establish new partnerships. And I'd say, very importantly in this country, there needs to be new partnerships between higher education and the major employers. And so that one of the other things that has to happen on our campuses, and we're seeing this actually, you wouldn't necessarily expect it with Silicon Valley. You know, they're sending people into our classrooms at historically black colleges, Googlers in residence, coming in and teaching coding the way it's done at Google, so that our students are competitive for Google. Now, there's another set of issues that they're going to have to learn to confront, and that those Googles have to change, and that is the culture within the company that will embrace the other and create a sense of belonging. But if that young person goes there fully competent and fully equipped technically, then some of those non-technical issues can be addressed perhaps more easily.
I love this because what I'm hearing is multiple levels of partnership. So I heard you say partnership between higher education and businesses. Michael, I also heard you say basically a partnership with the students and what they know, and also sort of looking around a community. So you said we live in a food desert, but then you also sort of slipped in, we're real close to the Dallas Cowboys. So it's looking at the deficit in your community, but also clearly, but what are the assets, right? So that you were mapping those. Right. But I also, in the conversation we were beginning to have in the back, Suzanne, was also allowing the young people's experiences to lead, and saying, okay, so what are you an expert in? So tell me a story about your high schoolers.
I mean, I think that they have these extraordinary assets, and they also, we're not trying to create a whole nation of entrepreneurs. We want young people who have an entrepreneurial mindset and can approach the work differently and have a different impact on their communities. But nobody knows what the community needs as well as the young people who live in the community.
Oh my God, say that again, please.
Nobody knows what young people need. Like, no, I mean, nobody knows what the community needs because they live there and they're there every day and they understand it. And so it can't be people from the outside coming in telling the community what they need. They need to decide what businesses are going to be able to serve the community, and what better person who's going to understand their target market than a young person who lives there. And so we are really trying to work with the students' assets, the fact that they understand their community better, the fact that they can code switch and speak with their friends and with their community, and many of them are multilingual, and see that, as you said, as an extraordinary asset versus they feel like a deficit.
Code switch. You might need to explain code switch.
Code switching. Thank you. Code switching is the ability to sort of speak in multicultural and different ways. So my young people might speak very differently with their friends than they speak with their venture capital advisors when they're asking for funding or when they do a site visit at Google. And that is actually an asset because they can sell to different target markets in a way that I never could, and that's extraordinary, but they haven't always been shown that they have these assets within them.
And so for me, this is so critical because there was a time in education where what we tried to do was to just sort of crush that code switching. Only speak this way all the time, rather than acknowledging and recognizing that that was, in fact, and is, right, an asset.
Absolutely.
I think it's, what I appreciate about the notion of these pathways is that it does not presume that there's one version of success, right? We're not trying to make a world of entrepreneurs. We're trying to make a world of people with entrepreneurial mindsets.
Right.
You know, as a manager and employer, I love that. I want everyone who works for me to have an entrepreneurial mindset. Not everybody's at the top of the organizational chart, but everybody, right? You want them thinking in these ways because that's what makes for a creative and energetic space.
And successful.
I love the idea that young people don't want to do busy work. They want to do real work in the real world where we have real problems. So get outside the classroom, even if you're reading the good books in order to get there, right? Read
We
Faulkner.
love the good books.
Right, read Faulkner and then go outside and see what Faulkner's writing about. And I love this idea that we should be in partnerships. We have very little time, but tell me if there's one takeaway, if there's a hashtag that you want to take away with the lessons from the work that you do, what would it be?
That we have an entire generation of young people that we are leaving behind who could be the most extraordinary assets this country has ever seen.
Ours is our hashtag nation building, right? We're not just creating college graduates, we're creating a better nation, and a nation that reflects the values and the realities of all of its people, not just the chosen few.
There are 700,000 men and women pursuing post-secondary degrees at historically black colleges and predominantly black institutions in this country, 70% of them low income. There's a lot of talent there. And when philanthropies like the Lilly Endowment invest in those institutions serving those people, great things happen that can be shared with the rest of the nation.
Thank you. Thank you to all of my panelists for joining me. I appreciate it.